Almost a year ago to the day, I drove the Tesla Model 3 Performance. On this episode of Eat, Sleep, Drive, we are driving the all-new Model Y in its performance version. Welcome everyone to another episode of Eat, Sleep, Drive. Now last year I drove the Model 3 and the Model 3 Performance, and it's been almost a year since that video came out. A lot of people watched it and I was super excited to get this Tesla Model Y. This is their all new, of course, CUV version, like more sportback type thing, but still the performance version. So we're gonna have some fun today checking this thing out. Before we take this thing for a spin, big thanks to my buddy Aaron for letting me borrow this. He rents a bunch of Teslas on Turo, and he's actually running a promotion through the end of May. If you DM him on Instagram and mention this video, you can rent a Tesla Model Y Performance for only $99. There's a link in the description below. But let's start first with some of the big differences that you're gonna find from the Model Y to the Model 3. I'm going to do a different video going into every single difference there is, but let's start with the big ones for now. Of course, the most notable difference between the Model 3 and the Model Y, despite the fact that they share about 75% of the same components, is of course the fact that this one is a CUV, unlike the sedan version, which is the Model 3. So you have this sloped back, sort of hatchback, sport hatch type deal going on. I think it does look really sleek. And in my eyes, I think the rear end of this looks better than the rear end of the Model 3. But let's go inside here, and I have to unlock it first. Because outside of the fact that it is a CUV, the biggest difference is the amount of legroom that you're gonna get back here. There's about 5 inches more legroom than the Model 3, but they did borrow roughly an inch from the front driver's seat. So you lose a little bit in the front, but gain more in the rear seat. There's pretty good headroom back here, slightly more than the Model 3 as well. And the nice part about these rear seats is that they recline a little bit, which is pretty nice. And even in the back, you can hit a switch and they will automatically fold down. I'll show you guys that now. It's only a few changes, but because of this, I am a big fan of the Model Y because I can take my bike, like full-size road bike type thing, and without taking the front tire off, just throw it in the back here. And if you've ever done that with a sedan, any sedan for that matter, it is a bit of a tricky thing to do, and you almost always have to take off the front tire. So this really saves a lot of time and is a good example of ways that the rear end of this thing is much more useful than the Model 3. I can't end the video without mentioning a few issues I noticed while combing over the car. And as much as it pains me to be that guy, they boil down to build quality. This is a very early VIN, something around the 900th Model Y built. So of course they're still working out some kinks, but 3 things to note. Number 1, the rear single seat would only go down about 50% of the time if you hit the button in the rear hatch area. Number 2, the rear hatch itself didn't seem to be aligned properly and was getting hung up on something when you opened it, making a horrible noise. Listen to this. Ew. I don't know what that was, but it doesn't sound good. And number 3, the carpet backing from the center seat kept getting caught up on the rear carpet and was subsequently pulling away from the seat itself. I don't think these things are deal breakers, and I bet they'll sort them out as production ramps up, but they are worth mentioning. Getting in the Tesla Model Y feels like deja vu. This feels exactly like the Model 3, and that's because it basically is on the inside, outside of some minor differences, of course, and the more rear leg room and that kind of thing. The design of the interior, I'm a fan of what Tesla's done on their lower tier models. They have just committed to the minimalist thing. Everything is controlled through this giant iPad screen thing. There are 2 buttons on the steering wheel, which are kind of roll around toggle type switches that actually do quite a bit. And then, you have your standard switches for windows and opening the door, but other than that, that's it. So it is quite refreshing in this day and age when some cars have a bajillion buttons. And don't get me wrong, I like tactile buttons, but if you're gonna commit to, having a big screen and doing the minimalist thing, this is a fantastic design. But more than anything, I want to know how this thing drives. I want to know if the added size takes anything away from the driving dynamics that you would get in a Model 3. So let's take this thing for a spin. All right, so it is time to take the Model Y Performance for a drive. And just like the Model 3, there's just a little stalk here that you push down to put it in drive. And you wouldn't really know if the car was on or in drive at all because there's no noises. It doesn't turn on because, of course, it's electric, and you just kind of put your foot down and it starts to go very quietly. But let's do one thing here. Start to any Tesla performance video review has to start with a 0 to 60, right? So I'm gonna put my head back for this one because I learned that last time. Okay, yep, it feels just as fast as the Model 3 Performance. Now, in the truest sense, it is not quite as quick. The Model 3 Performance does 0 to 60 in about 3.2 seconds. This one does it in about 3.5, but nearest I can tell, they are roughly the same. Maybe if you drove them back to back, like all the time, you would know the difference, but this thing is still so friggin' quick. It has all-wheel drive, so that means that is a dual motor version. And the launch of this car, which is basically going on right now, at this point you can only get a dual motor version like this one because they are not doing the rear-wheel drive version, which will come out with next year, which is, by the way, cheaper. So the base version is about 4.8 seconds 0 to 60. And we're gonna hop on the highway here. So the regular version is no slouch either, but this is just effortless torque. I mean, just don't look at the speed number because it goes up so fast. Nothing new here from electric vehicles. Insane instant torque. This thing is ultra fast. So the acceleration feels about the same to me as the Model 3 does. Now, once again, going back to the all-wheel drive thing, 2 motors. They will eventually have a rear-wheel drive version, which will be cheaper. So this is about $53,000 in the base dual motor version. This one specifically, because it is the performance version, is closer to 61, give or take. So definitely a pricey vehicle, but they pack a lot of features in these things. The Autopilot stuff, which I would like to showcase right now, is really good. I really like it for this setting when you're just on an open highway, there's not a lot of cars around. I said this in my review last year, and it still stays true in my opinion. I'm still questionable on it with a lot of cars around or in construction or going through cities. Sure, going between cities, like driving from a major city to another major city where you have open highway like this, it works great. You get the lane keep assist, which I could just basically take my hand off the wheel and it will keep the lane, although it does have me occasionally kind of tug at the wheel to make sure that I'm paying attention, or at least claiming that I'm paying attention. It does the speed, of course. It does the, if someone in front of me brakes, it will brake for you. And overall it just does a really good job, but they keep claiming that the full self-driving is coming, and I just don't know how I feel about that. There's just scenarios I still run into, especially when lanes lanes end and new lanes are coming on and merging, and when the lines go away, the car kind of drifts around still. That's just one example. What I will say is that what they've done here is also show you kind of new features since the last time I was in a Model 3. The newer models have more processing power and stuff and are really getting close to self-driving, at least according to Tesla. And you can tell that's evident because you can see traffic lights on the screen here. You can see if it's red, yellow, or green. You can see stop signs as we come up. We're coming up to a stop sign here. On the screen, I'm going to see a little stop sign on the right. So it's pretty crazy. You can tell that they are, obviously like mining all this data, getting everything kind of as good as they can before they release the full self-driving mode. But once again, the problem I have with these kind of things is that until it is full self-driving, I don't like this, am I in control, am I not? You're supposed to pay attention, but it kind of lulls you to sleep because it mostly drives for you. And the whole idea of potentially having to react is kind of more draining than just driving the car. So a lot of times I just find myself driving the car regular. There's only scenarios like that where it's big open road that I will engage Autopilot and let it do its thing. So those are my thoughts on it. They're getting close, for sure. They're getting close. But you just keep in mind, like, in my opinion, it's still a little bit further away than Tesla's going to claim. But let's do a little bit of twisty roads here. There's a runner on the road, which we would be careful of. When it comes to the suspension and the components, this is a little bit of a rougher road. And I could already tell that despite the fact that the performance is mind-bending, and in a very video game sense, I can just like zip around here quite faster than like you can in pretty much any other vehicle on a road like this. But there's not a lot of feel. There's virtually no feel coming through the steering wheel. I have it in comfort because the other settings that you can put it in are standard and sport. They just make the wheel heavier, doesn't do anything, doesn't give you any more feel. But the video game-ness, as we almost kill a bird, is just like the Model 3. So don't think that that's going to go away. The biggest differences I noticed from the Model 3 driving is the more body roll, slightly more body roll. And these wheels, man, like the performance wheels, it makes me just not interested in getting the performance model if it was me, because as we go down these rough roads, it's a little bit jarring. And just look at the tires. There are none. It's just like a super thin rubber band of a tire. And the problem with that is it doesn't soak up any bumps. Great for performance. You definitely felt the body roll in that change there. Great for performance on smooth roads. It's great, but just would like a little more compliance. So in that regard, I am definitely a performance-oriented person, but if I was going to buy a Tesla, it would be for a daily driver. It's not going to replace my performance car. I don't get the same thrill, despite this being just as faster. It's not the same kind of thrill. So for me, just give me the base Tesla version and let me have my more compliant ride and still have all the benefits of an electric vehicle and the efficiency and all that kind of stuff. So I will say that's a little bit of a letdown with the performance is, downsize the wheels, I would say. Get a little bit of a better ride. They certainly look really cool. I will give you that. The wheels look friggin' awesome. So let's hop back on the highway. So I want to talk about some more of the technology in this car, because of course that's what this is about. The big thing with Teslas over a lot of other vehicles, and some other vehicles are getting more like this, but the ability for them to do over-the-air updates. And what do I mean by over-the-air updates? Over-the-air updates means they can, just wave a wand and update the software for you. So because these cars have so many sensors and they're already built with so much processing power, they're continually updating all the software in these things. And it's such a nice thing because one day you'll just get in and they will have updated it and there'll be a new feature. So that's a really nice thing that a lot of people that I talk to that own Teslas and you know, are big fans of them, that's one of the big benefits that they always talk about, is that you have just new features all the time. And the customizability is something that I mentioned before in the steering. There's so many things that you can customize on this thing. You can customize the level of creep. Creep is like when you're stopped and you let off the gas pedal or the brake pedal in a traditional gas engine car. You know how it just kind of like rolls forward, assuming you're on flat ground. You know, electric cars don't have a torque converter, which is what's happening there with the gas engine cars and traditional automatics. So, you know, they wouldn't do that inherently, but they built it in so you can turn it on here on the screen. So if you want it to creep, it can creep. If you want it to just roll around freely, it will roll around. If you want it to just, if you're not touching any pedal and you're at a stop, it will hold the brakes. So if you're on a hill, forward or backward, whatever you want to call it, it'll just hold you. So, you know, there's that kind of stuff. There's so many things that you can adjust here. The steering, the mirrors, the steering wheel controls, the lights. I mean, it's basically endless, and there's some super in-depth videos on this kind of stuff. I don't want to dive like too crazy deep, but the driving settings are pretty cool. You can adjust, the other thing I want to mention is the regenerative braking. You can adjust the regenerative braking, and see the car's wandering, comes back, not too bad. That was one of those scenarios where the lane ends and the car will start to kind of like wander over. It wasn't too bad in that scenario, but I have had worse ones. Also, we might run into it up here. See, it's just confused. It's really bouncing between lanes there. So, perfect example right there. I drove this exact road in the Model 3 and I complained about this, and it's happening. But now we get cones that show up on my screen. But anyway, it's still very impressive. The last thing I'll say on the settings, regenerative braking is pretty fun to play with. You can have it set to standard or low, and that basically is like trying to recoup energy. When I let off the gas, it will basically regenerate electricity because it's turning the kinetic energy into battery charge. And you can customize that if you don't like that, because you can basically drive the car with one pedal if you turn that feature on. You can put it on the low setting and it will drive more like a traditional automatic, where it will just coast a little more when you let off the brakes. So it's you know, there's those kind of features and stuff as well. I've turned off self-driving because we're in a bit of construction zone and I just need to be aware. But overall, I mean, this thing I really like it. It's very much the Model 3 and everything I liked about the Model 3. You know, the performance is certainly still there. It's electric and it has all the technology. It's super, super quiet. And that's something I really didn't mention before. And it's all electric vehicles are ultra quiet, but they just make for such a wonderful driving experience. And couple that with this amazing sound system, you really get such a nice, pleasant experience driving this car. You know, the clarity in the audio almost seems better just because of how quiet it is in here. So outside of a little wind noise because my camera mount, you really traditionally wouldn't hear anything on this. So the road noise isn't too bad. Certainly a little more over broken pavement, but I mean, the big benefits for the Model Y, and the reason that personally, if I was going to buy a Tesla now, I would probably get the Model Y over the Model 3, just because once again, I would use it as a daily driver, and I'm going to want the more versatility that you get with the rear. Bigger rear seats, bigger hatch opening, so I can just toss my bike in there and go away. You know, obviously it's going to vary person to person. Not everyone rides a bike, but you might have other needs that you need, you know, more room in the back seats or whatever. I really don't notice any compromises in the driving dynamics as opposed to the Model 3, other than the little bit of body roll like I mentioned. So, you know, you really get kind of the best of both worlds with this car, And the other thing is the range is really not even affected that much either. In the standard dual motor car, this is the performance version, it takes a bit of a hit, but in the standard dual motor performance car, which is the one I would buy, you get about 315 miles to a charge. In the Model 3, you get 322 in the basically equivalent model. So, okay, 7 miles of range. I mean, if that's all I'm losing and I'm gaining all this versatility, I think it's going to be a lot harder to convince people to buy the Model 3 over the Model Y, especially when they start offering the cheaper version. Right now, dual motor only, so it is quite expensive, but when they offer that, when they offer the cheap one, it's gonna be hard to beat that thing. Let me know what you guys think in the comments below about the Tesla Model Y. I'm pretty impressed with it, as you can tell. I was impressed with the Model 3, and this is just such a smart step for Tesla. Between the RAV4 and the Honda CR-V, they sold about 1 million of those last year alone. 1 million cars and 2 SUVs. So Tesla, of course, wants to get in the CUV market because it's just so hot in America. So let me know what you guys think in the comments below. I appreciate you guys watching as always. If you stuck around this long, I really appreciate it. Hit the subscribe button, hit the like button if you enjoyed the video. And if you want to follow me in between episodes, check me out on Instagram at Eat Sleep Drive TV. Otherwise, I look forward to seeing you guys on the next one. See ya.